Hello and welcome to TV Persia. Today, we are diving into the modern economic standoff that reshaping trade and policies, the US-China trade war. Trade is a crucial part of any economy, allowing countries to exchange goods and services to support their industries and consumer. However, when one country believes it's being treated unfairly, tension can rise, leading to an economic dispute known as a trade war. During the first Trump administration, a significant trade war unfolded, mainly targeting China, but also affecting other countries like Canada, Mexico, and the European Union. This policy was driven by the Trump First American approach, aiming to reduce trade deficit, bringing jobs back to the United States, and challenging what he called unfair trade practice. But the question is, why did Trump decide to implement such a bold strategy? In this video, we will analyze the causes, key events, and economic impact of the Trump trade war. The trade war didn't start overnight. It was rooted in a long-standing economic issues. Here are some key reasons behind Trump's decisions to impose tariff. The first one is a trade deficit with China. The US had a massive trade deficit with China, meaning it imported far more than it exported. Trump saw this as a sign that China was taking advantage of US. He frequently criticized previous administration for allowing the deficit to grow, arguing that the China had gained an unfair economic advantage. And the second one is intellectual property theft. US businesses accused China of stealing American technology and forcing companies to hand over trade secrets to access the Chinese market. The Chinese government was also accused of hacking US companies to gain access to private information. The issue had been a major concern for years, with the report estimating that the intellectual property theft cost US businesses hundreds of billions of dollars annually. And the third one is unfair trade practice. Trump argued that China manipulated its currency, heavily subsidized its industries, and engaged in unfair competition that hurt American manufacturers. By keeping its currency value artificially low, China made its export cheaper, putting US companies at disadvantage. And the last one is steel and aluminum imports. The US also imposed tariff on steel and aluminum from allies like Canada, Mexico, and European Union, claiming these imports harm American producers. This move, however, sparked backlash from allies who argued that they were unfairly targeted. Trump's goal was to use tariff as a tool to pressure on China and other nations into changing their policies. However, China and other countries responded with their own tariff, escalating the war trade. Having established why the trade war started, let's take a look at how it evolved and escalated over time. The trade war officially began in 2018 and unfolded in the several key phases. In March 2018, Trump imposed a 25% tariff on steel and 10% tariff on aluminum import, affecting allies like Canada, Mexico, and European Union. These countries responded with their own tariff on American product. In July 2018, the US imposed a 25% tariff on $34 billion worth of the Chinese goods, including electronics, auto part, and industrial machinery. China responded with a tariff on US agricultural products, particularly soybeans and pork. In September 2018, the US expanded tariff to $200 billion worth of the Chinese good, including consumer products like furniture, electronics, and apparel. China retaliated with a $16 billion in tariff on US export, increasing tension further. And in May 2019, trade war negotiations between the US and China collapsed. Trump raised tariff on $200 billion of the Chinese good from 10% to 25%. China responded by imposing additional tariff on reducing purchases of US agricultural product, and in January 2020, the Phase 1 deal was signed. China agreed to buy more US product, particularly agricultural goods, and the US reduced some tariff. However, most tariffs remained in place and tension continued. Despite the Phase 1 deal, many of the issues that sparked the trade war remained unresolved and the economic impact persisted. Now that we have seen the escalation, let's dive into the economic consequences both for the US and the rest of the world. Economic impact on the US and other countries. Number 1. Higher price for consumer. Tariff made import goods more expensive, forcing American businesses and consumers to pay more. Many companies had to either absorb the higher cost or pass them on consumers, leading to increased price for everyday good. Number 2. A struggle for farmers. China retaliated by imposing tariff on US agriculture product, particularly soybean, pork, and dairy. American farmers suffered huge losses, and the US government have to provide over the $28 billion in subsidies to support them. Number 2. Manufacturing slowdown. Industry that relied on Chinese component faced rising costs, leading to layoffs and reduced production. Sectors such as automotive, electronics, and machinery were particularly affected. Number 4. Stock market. Market reacted sharply to each new tariff announcement, creating uncertainty for investors. While some US companies benefit from reduced competition, overall market stability suffered. And about China, China economy took hit as export to US declined. However, China adapted by increasing trade with other countries such as Brazil and the European Union to offset losses. Also, many multinational companies had to adjust their supply chain to avoid tariff, increasing production costs and shifting manufacturing to other countries like Vietnam and India. These countries faced initial tariff but eventually renegotiated trade agreement. While the trade war presumed China, it also created economic struggle at home and abroad. Now, moving beyond the immediate effects, it is essential to look at the long-term shift that the trade war set in motion, which will continue to impact the US, China, and other countries for years to come. The first aspect is a shift in the global supply chain. As the trade war escalated, many companies began rethinking their supply chain strategy. Tariff increased the cost of importing goods, particularly from China, promoting businesses to either find cheaper supplier in other country or move their manufacturing operation altogether. Countries like Vietnam, India, and even Mexico saw a rise in foreign direct investments as the companies sought to reduce their dependencies on China. This reorganization of the supply chain, while beneficial to some countries, also led to increased cost and logistical challenges for others. In essential, while some countries gain, others struggle with the cost of these adjustments. And the second one is the impact on the global economic growth. The trade war between the US and China contributed to the slowdown in global economic growth. As a result, with both nations imposing tariffs on each other, global trade volume decreased, which affected countries that rely heavily on exports. Multinational corporations that operate globally faced a tough environment as their businesses were caught in the crossfire. The International Monetary Fund and other global economic bodies warned that the tariff could have negative effect on the global growth prospect. In fact, by the end of 2019, some estimates suggested that the trade war could reduce global GDP by up to 0.3%. And the last one is a US-China relationship beyond trade. The trade war was not only an economic conflict but also a geopolitical one. Looking at the bigger picture, it highlighted the growing rivalry between the US and China, particularly as China's global influence continued to expand. As the US imposed tariff on Chinese goods, it also took steps to limit Chinese access to certain technology, such as the semiconductor and advanced machinery. Ultimately, this has had long-term effect on the tech industry, with China investing heavily in developing its own technological capabilities to reduce dependencies on West. So it is important to understand while much of the conversation around tariff focuses on economic metrics, it is also essential to consider the human cost of the trade war. For instance, workers in industries like agriculture, manufacturing, and retail were among the hardest hit. For example, US farmers saw their income fall significantly due to retaliatory tariff, and many had to make difficult decisions about whether to stay in the businesses or leave the industries. In addition, small businesses were unfairly affected by the rising cost and supply chain disruption, while larger corporations with more resources could absorb the cost more easily. Therefore, it is crucial to recognize that while the trade war had its economic objectives, its human cost was also considerable too. In conclusion, the trade war initiated by the Trump administration has left a lasting impact on both US and global economies, and its relevance continued into the second Trump administration. While the trade war sought to challenge China trade practices and reduce the trade deficit, its effects on the industry, workers, and global supply chain are still being felt. The tariff imposed have created both winners and losers, and ongoing tensions suggest that the trade conflict will persist, shaping future trade policies and international relationships. As the world adapts to these changes, the full consequences of this prolonged trade war are yet to unfold. Thanks for watching. We really appreciate your time and support. If you enjoy our content, please like and leave a comment. And we see you in the next video.